You know, for years we've seen pictures like this, a truck, this one right here, a truck driving over the border fence into the United States. But it might be even easier than that. Did you know there are giant gaps in the border fence, and plenty of people are taking advantage? Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse just took a tour of our southern border where he took a number of pictures. He joins us from Capitol Hill right now. Good morning to you, Senator.
Morning, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Well, you were on a bipartisan learning tour. What did you learn?
You know, there are a lot of great Americans working hard for us in the Customs and Border Patrol, and there's some good leadership, but we don't have a secure border.
And in fact, I know that you took an overflight, a 90-minute overflight, and there are parts of the border fence where there's no fence. So that's not going to stop anybody.
Yeah, the Rio Grande River, one of our pilots joked it's really the Rio Pequeño. It's not a river at places. It's, 100 yards wide and 8 inches deep at places, and people can just come right across.
Sure. We're looking at a picture right now. It's kind of hard to see, but along the Rio Grande right there, you see 3 or 4 guys, I believe on the American side, they're running. Also, at one point, you saw 3 or 4 guys with a raft in a tree. And your pilot said what to you about those guys?
Well, this is what they do. Again, our Border Patrol agents are doing really good, hard work, but there's a lack of will to solve this problem. And so there were unmanned overflights, we were in manned overflights, helicopters, boats on the Rio Grande, and pretty much everywhere you'd go, either by eyesight or by surveillance, you'd see people trying to get across the river. There are traffickers that do this as a business, and there are more of them than there are of us right now.
Surely. You are particularly concerned with the jihad-minded migrants, so aren't you?
Right. I mean, there are a whole bunch of reasons people are trying to get across the border. This is the greatest country in the world, and economic opportunity is obviously going to be a magnet. There are human traffickers, sex traffickers, smugglers. But my primary question is, once there are jihadi attacks in the U.S., which I think is our future, and we find that some of them came across our porous borders, what are we going to do then? Because that's what we should be doing now. Right.
And I understand you talked to a number of Texas ranchers. What did they tell you?
We did. We met with some ranchers, and they're folks trying to make a living and put bread on the table for their families, and they'll have folks crashing through their fences because they're trying to flee Border Patrol agents, and then we have to renegotiate issues of whether or not the Border Patrol can pursue folks that come through their fences. They also find dead bodies on their property of people who die of heat and thirst in the summer. So there's a big problem. We put pictures at Ben Sasse on Twitter of all that we saw for these 3 days.
Yeah. In addition to doing that, you have been vocal questioning the president's so-called amnesty benefits. Explain what those are and your concern.
The president hasn't been forthcoming about what his executive amnesty will do. My beginning concerns about this are obviously constitutional, about the separation of powers, but there are long-term financial implications as well. The president is envisioning a world where he will issue 4 to 5 million Social Security numbers. Once an illegal immigrant has a Social Security number, they can apply for the Earned Income Tax Credit, and they can get up to $6,000 because most of these folks are obviously not making middle or upper class wages. And then once they've gotten their first $6,000, under the rules, if you have a Social Security number, you can refile for 3 more years. So there are amnesty bonuses of up to $24,000 per person that's granted deferred action, and the administration hasn't been forthcoming about any of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people need to be asking more questions out loud, and we need to hear more of the answers. And you are apparently leading the charge right now. Senator Ben Sasse from the great state of Nebraska. Sir, thank you very much for joining us today from Capitol Hill.
Thanks for having me on.
You bet.